Paul41, good luck. Oh, we've actually played before as well. It's a bit of a rating gap. 2,400 games per point, that's very good. I'm just around 900 now. Just slightly over 900. Goes d6. Okay, we'll just challenge for the center then. Okay, bishop comes out early. We could even just attack the bishop early. We can just challenge for the center in lots of ways. I think I'll go c4, like a traditional d4 type opening. If takes, I'll just take back with the e-pawn. I mean, you could go with the g-pawn as well. But we're giving ourselves the option to develop the queen, guard the knight, hit the pawn. So, oops, this one. We create a threat, we guard the knight at the same time. So it looks like a very natural development move. So I'm going to play it. And even if we develop our knight here, we're still covering here. So what do we want to do now? I'm actually going to attack the bishop and see if you want to trade or if you want to drop back. The one downside now is if I push my pawn, I'm not guarding my knight. I could play knight across first. I could even go g3 and bishop on the diagonal. He's gone back over. How to do it, how to do it. I'm just going to go slow and steady does it. Reinforce the pawn. I can actually take that and that's a check. And then just maybe drop the queen back. We're just looking for common sense moves here. Try not to blunder anything really sloppy. Now, I could go back and I'm still in the pin. So what about if we go back this way? So now we're no longer in this pin. We still double guard the pawn. We're just going to try and get the bishop up and get castled. Maybe get the knight up. My arrows are all over the place, aren't they? All over the place. Okay, he's dropped the bishop back. So I'm just going to get the queen out of there. We cover this move. So we've got a very natural position now, just logical develop moves, get castled, then worry about what to do. He might do something like this to get ready to sack, might do. So let's just try and be prepared. That's exactly what he's done. Okay, I won't try and castle just yet. I'll just develop a knight. We can maybe get ready to launch forward. We can develop the bishop and give queenside castling a potential option. Okay, he's come forward. I have a feeling we should probably take there, but I've got knight up first as a nice move. Hit the bishop. Yeah, I like that first, actually. We're moving a piece twice in the opening, which ideally you don't want to do, like we've done with a queen, but until we get castled. Stick to principles where you can, but this position kind of calls for it. So he's come forward, so I think we just go back here now. We could develop. Actually, developing looks like a better move to me. We get the bishop developed, we take away the risk of him trying to sack on h3. Unless he tries to drop back, for instance, then we can maybe take the pawn. We still adequately cover this pawn. If takes, I'll probably take with a queen because the knight's very well placed. It creates an immediate threat. So I'm going to take with a queen. It creates an immediate threat. This is one, the pawn is well guarded, so maybe just pawn up here. Maybe queen up and we can trade, otherwise we'll just try and castle. Once we've castled, we'll try and complete our piece development and then try and attack. I will get the cursor off the board so there's no accidental slips. Okay, so he has indeed launched the pawn forward, so I think castling is a very logical move here. He's going to move his bishop and castle himself. I don't think we can realistically stop that. So I'm just going to castle. Well, he's played knight forward instead of the bishop up, so that gives us a chance to grab another pawn here. So what's the best way to do it? If we go with the queen and you take... if we go with the queen you can't take because of the pin. So queen takes, knight takes, it's just another pawn, isn't it? Rook across, we can drop back. We're not losing the knight, so I think we just take here. This knight can't move now because of the pin. Queen takes, knight takes, we've gained a second pawn. And we've got a square here, or we can come back here even if we end up giving a pawn back, but we've not lost anything. If the knight comes under attack. If rook across, we can maybe take another pawn. Then again, black just needs to find a way to get that bishop moved, get castled. And then worry what to do when your king's that little bit safer. Okay. So again, I'd recommend just shift your bishop somewhere if you can find a square. Oh, he has moved the rook, so we can take another pawn and attack that rook. But we've got a natural square to come back to, guarded by the other knight. So I think we do that. I'd already seen that move, so if we drop back here, one knight's guarded by the other. We've still got at least one safe square we can jump to. Actually, here we can come back. I just realised if we jump here, bishop takes, pawn takes, this knight could be loose, but here we actually attack the rook. So now we can maybe just support the knight with a pawn. So you're just going to pay attention to those little tricks. So I like the idea of starting to march a pawn down the board here. Just leave the knights in place. Bishop down is a very natural move. He doesn't do that. But the knight move gives us a chance to push the pawn on another 2 and maybe another 3 squares. I think that looks very good. I mean, we could play bishop up, but knight in is a bit annoying. So I'm just going to try and run the pawn as far down the board as I can. Okay, so just run it down another square and maybe another one. Very difficult for black here. You've got to find a way to get your bishop up and castle and get the other rook into the game. Obviously, ideally before we get down, but we're threatening to just push next move anywhere. So if you go back, we can come down. You can't easily cover the corner. We've got to check, or we just simply push. So it's a very difficult position. He's played rook across, so I assume we just push here. I don't see any other trick. I mean, he's got knight back, but we can't really stop it, but we can just promote anyway, even if he plays knight back. Just get a queen. Now, can we get our bishop into play here and threaten a check? That looks very, very logical to me, so I'm going to push to try and release the bishop, threaten a check here, put pressure on. But we've got an extra knight, and we've got an extra couple of pawns, haven't we? 4 pawns against 6 pawns, so we could take the knight here, but bishop check is what I was aiming for. He can step out the way and we can win the bishop. So knight takes, rook or pawn takes, we still got a check, and it gets rid of one of his pieces, but our knight will be under attack, so I'm actually going to check first. If we take here, rook takes, you're directly attacking our knight. So this way you probably have to step up. There is a knight check, but you can step across. So I'll probably just take the bishop. Again, so we've got the option to take the knight with check, but if you take, you attack our knight. So I think it makes sense just to take the bishop. I'm going to take it with the rook. Try and force his other rook off the board. We're up a lot of material, so even if we blunder somewhere and we lose a piece, we're still comfortably up. So even if we miss a tactic somewhere, we're still comfortably up. So I'll pre-move in case he takes a knight, which he's done, but we've got 2 extra pieces. We can afford to lose one. We could give up a bishop for a pawn. We can just try and support our pawn and run it up the board. Now there we can actually push because the bishop covers. Back, we can just drop back. It's not easy when you've got such a monstrous rating gap, of course. Opponent's not doing badly for the rating level. Okay, now we're just going to run the pawn further up the board, get the rook across as and when needed. Just run up the board. I guess king across and king back, so he's gone for that. So up, you'll have to go across, so we just need to find a way to guard. I like just a simple get behind the pawn. Keep it simple. Play simple chess if you can do. Okay, so now do we get the knight in? We can go here, and even if we allow this, it's still completely winning, of course. But down, across, bishop up, king over. We could throw a knight check in. Yeah, that's going to be winning. So let's just push the pawn on. So if rook across, I'm just looking at bishop up to attack the rook, and if king over, the knight can attack the king and deflecting it from the defense of the rook. Okay, so rook's gone across. I could play knight across first to try and stop these. You've got 1 square here, but I don't see the need to. I'm just going to attack the rook. If you defend it here, knight check looks to be winning. You could just simply take the rook, allow the king to take back, and then just march another pawn down the board. That's also cleanly winning. You're just trying to pay attention to not blunder stalemate, but pawns are on the board that can be moved, so there's no stalemate risk. Okay, so I will just get a queen. Now I will just capture back. Okay, now here I can actually cut the king off from coming back to this side. Okay, I will push a pawn which is protected. Just march the pawn further along. Okay. So how do we want to do this? We've got rook down to stop the king coming back. Then we just push on. And that looks to be clean, doesn't it? We attack a pawn in the process, but it should allow us to push on and queen in 2 moves. Okay, so I'm just double checking now that I can push up here. You can't take because it's guarded. You can't step forward. You could step forward here, but we can just simply queen with a discovered check. And you can't step here because of the bishop, so it looks like a nice move. There's no stalemate risk because there's multiple pawn moves that can be made. Okay, so again, I'm just trying to make sure we're not blundering anything, but it looks clean. So here I'm going to get the knight out of the way, and then we're just going to go for the nice simple ladder mate. We'll just get the pieces out of the way first. But I'm just going to give that one up just to create a nice simple ladder mate. Where you can do keep chess simple, it makes it a little bit less risky that you're going to go wrong. And that's checkmate. But again, for our opponent, for the rating gap at the level, it's not a bad effort. It's not a bad effort. Let's see what it was in engine speak. Let's say we have played before. It could have been in any time control. It might well have been rapid. So they're the move times for both players. So let's just request an analysis. Does it show our score when I hover now? Yeah, if you hover over somebody like that and you played before, if you click on that, it'll bring up the games that you've actually played. But yeah, not a bad effort though. For the rating level and the gap there, not a bad effort. Obviously, it's been a comfortable game for us, but it's not easy at every level when you're playing somebody so much higher rated. So what are the figures here? Wow, look at that. 97% versus 92% on the accuracy, because our opponent was in a losing position but finding lots and lots of really good moves. So that shows how the figures can be a bit misleading sometimes. You know, 97% for me is a really good figure, but it's not going to be GM busting, even though it looks really good. And our opponent, 92% from what was essentially a losing position, but still found an awful lot of good moves. So not a great deal to look at in the review, but we're just trying to challenge for the center. Queen early, it's maybe a little bit too early. It's not a mistake, it's not been flagged, but wasn't any need to do it. You could just develop your minor pieces first, get castled, and then worry about the rest of the game. That's what we normally do. And in this position, we've seen a chance to win another pawn, and another pawn, and we try and get the knight back. You just got to pay attention here. Like I said, if you suddenly drop the knight back here, you realise that bishop takes, pawn takes, and you lose your other knight. So just things like that to pay attention to if that position arose. But here we were able to just march the pawn right down the board, win a piece, get the bishop into the game, win another piece, then march another pawn down the board, and then win another piece. Then it's just a case of trying to make sure you're not blundering stalemate when you're so completely winning like this. So we've got another queen, get the knight and the bishop out of the way, and just play for the nice simple ladder mate. That's all we've done there. But yeah, you can see the figures 97, 92. So on the face of it, 92, you'd be happy to play that pretty much every game, wouldn't you? So, but it is what it is. So decent effort, well done.